So now let's get started with the introduction. So we all live in a digital world, and right now I'm not sure how many of us are comfortable with carrying cash in their wallet. Uh, we are more comfortable in carrying credit cards, or we are more comfortable in making and completing a transaction using online payment methods like UPI, GPay, WhatsApp Pay, Phone Pay, Paytm, and whatnot. Um, so basically, we are looking for more convenient approaches for completing the transaction. There's nothing wrong in doing that. Definitely, it saves a lot of time, and at the same time, we don't have to worry about what if my wallet gets stolen. Um, Anyways, I can definitely block my card or block my UPI accounts in case if my wallet or my phone gets stolen. But at the same time, this has also paved a way for a lot of frauds, digital frauds, um, to to happen. And this fraud is basically the price that we are paying for the cost of convenience. Okay, we all wanted the convenient way to perform the transaction, and fraud is basically the price that we are paying for it. Just to give you some number, in Q2 2022 alone, the UPI clocked over 17.4 billion transactions in volume, and that closely amounts to 30.4 trillion Indian rupees. And even if you are going to consider a fraud rate of 1 bps, uh, so 1 basis point is basically 1/100th of a percentage. That basically translates to a loss of 3 billion. So even if the fraud rate is as low as 1 basis point, it translates to a amount of 3 billion. So you can just look at the scale with which we are operating here. And a lot of studies have projected that the online payment fraud is about to exceed to 343 billion over the next 5 years, because as we go forward into the future, we will be living in a more digital world. We will not be going back to printing currencies and exchanging currencies. We will definitely be going forward to a digital world. So that is the scale of the problem that we are trying to solve. Yeah. So now let's see some of the types of frauds and how fraud has evolved. Of course, we won't be able to cover all the types of frauds that occur. I've just picked some of the important types of fraud that possibly could occur or has occurred in the past, and we'll just try to explain some of them. Okay. So one of the common types of fraud is identity theft. I think most of us over here would have experienced this, or at least known someone who was basically affected by this. So this is basically when you lose your credentials. Let's say someone steals your UPI password or your bank username and password, and tries to impersonate you and make unauthorized transactions on behalf of you. So that is what is meant by identity theft, and this is kind of common. And now there is somewhat more awareness amongst people, and this has, I would say, has not completely we haven't removed this from the equation, but it still persists, but its presence has gone down. And then we have something called as phishing attacks. So this happens when a customer gets a random luring message from a unknown person saying that hey, you won $1 million, please click on the link to provide the bank details for us to credit the money to your account. So something of the sort. Or also it could be the other way around. Someone who could message the person saying that your bank account details are compromised, please click on the link to change your bank account details. So when the person clicks on these kind of malicious links, it will act as a way for them to do some type of fraud. Okay. And the next type of fraud is social engineering. Of course, phishing is also a type of social engineering, but social engineering is a very broad topic. This could happen when fraudsters try to uh, play with the person's emotions. They play psychologically and manipulate the customer and trick them into sending some money to them, and so on and so forth. And then what we have is web skimming. So this happens when attackers or fraudsters try to send some malicious software into your phone or in the web page where you're making some transaction, and use that as a means to perform unauthorized transactions and commit different types of fraud. And there is also another type of fraud that is quite common, not only in the fintech domain, but in general the entire software industry itself, that is called as the bot attacks. So this is basically when fraudsters try to attack the payment gateways directly by bringing down the system, and they do that by sending lot of unnecessary and unwanted requests to the payment gateways, thereby denying the genuine customers to complete the transaction using the payment gateway. This is called as the denial of service or DOS attacks. And sometimes when the extreme case of this is called DDoS, which is distributed denial of service, when fraudsters not only use a single system to attack the payment gateway, but they use a group of systems to attack and bring down the payment gateway. The victims of bot attack are mostly the payment providers or the payment gateway providers, and not the customers in most cases. Of course, the customers are also affected because they are not able to perform a transaction, but financially they are not affected much. So fraudsters, if you see, are coming up with more and more innovative ways to cheat the system and find loopholes in the system and exploit them. And at the same time, uh, people or the people who build these systems are also becoming more and more intelligent, and they're also keeping pace with these fraudsters and putting right checks and balances to make sure that our money is safe. And oftentimes fintech giants are trying to reinstate the faith in system by bringing in stricter rules and regulations when they are onboarding a customer. And if you see nowadays, there are a lot of multi-factor authentications that are coming up. So when you log into any uh, bank website, apart from the username and password, you also need to provide an OTP that they send to make sure that your login is successful. So sometimes even if your uh, credentials, login credentials are compromised, uh, the fraudster will still not be able to log in because of this OTP check. And they're also ensuring that KYC is done for all customers to make sure that they don't onboard any fraudster in their system. So yeah, so as I said before, this is just to give an idea as to what are the different types of frauds that could happen. This is not the entire picture. Yeah. So next, in this slide, we will just see two of the common frauds that occurred in the past in India. It was quite common some time back. Of course, there are many other frauds that are occurring and have occurred, but I've just picked two of them, which was quite common and it made to the media. So the first one is the money received scam. So I'll just talk about it a little bit. So in money received scam, what happens is the fraudster tries to contact a genuine customer and claims that they by mistake sent some money to the customer's account, and that the customer has to revert the money back to the fraudster. Okay. So fraudster also tries to fake the screenshot that says transaction successful of popular payment gateways, and send it to the customer, and that kind of adds more evidence, or customer treats it as an evidence of the transaction being complete, and they will, without checking the bank account, they will just send the money to the fraudster. And after some time they get to know that they have been cheated. So this is one type of fraud that was happening quite a lot some time back. Of course, there are a lot of awareness campaigns that are being conducted by the financial organizations and bank to avoid this kind of scam. So second type of fraud that was quite common some time back was device takeover fraud. So this happens when a customer gets a call from the fraudster telling that uh, they are calling from the some bank or some financial organization, and that their password has expired, and that they have to install the software which they will be sending, and using that they can update their password to make sure that it's in sync with the system. And the customers, without knowing or verifying the fact, they'll just install the software that is being sent to the system. It could happen both, even in a mobile as well as in a system. And fraudsters will use this malicious software that is installed in the customer's account or customer system, to carry out all sorts of illegal activities. So I mean, I for sure know that there are many different types of frauds that are occurring out there, but these two are very prominent, and they were occurring quite a lot. And as I said, there are a lot of awareness campaigns being put to make sure that frauds are eliminated as much as possible from the arena of fintech. Yeah. So now let's see how fraud detection can be done using artificial intelligence and machine learning. Traditionally, if you see, rules were used a lot for handling frauds and filtering them from the system. Okay, and the rules could be as simple as preventing a person to perform a transaction from a different geography altogether. Okay, just to give you more information, let's say that there is a customer who is primarily located in Chennai, and all the transactions that he has done in the past till now was in and around Chennai or in the near vicinity of Chennai. And suddenly, if a transaction comes up from an unknown location, from some remote part of the world, that is suspicious, and there could be a simple rule which could prevent that type of transaction happening. So this is a hard coded rule. That's a very simple rule. It works good, but it does not capture all the cases that are out there. And the person could have genuinely traveled to the location, could have done the transaction, and there are a lot of possibilities which this rules ignore. So some of the main issues with using these rules are, first of all, creating these rules is a labor intensive process, because these rules are handcrafted. You're not using some kind of an intelligent system to come up with these rules. These rules are basically created by humans after looking at patterns in the data. And these rules, basically, they are static. They don't evolve automatically with time. So every time, whenever you want to refresh the rule, and human intervention is needed. Someone has to go to the system physically, understand the data, and see how the rule has to be updated. So this is a very time consuming process, and it won't scale to the extent the digital payment is growing. And in most of the times, these frauds or these fraud detection rules are done using some legacy software, and they don't work well with streaming data. So if you see right now, lot of data is being collected from a single mobile phone. You will see, I mean, gigabytes of data being collected on a daily basis. Okay, so these rules will not be in a position to make use of the streaming data that is currently available, thanks to our smartphone and other devices that enable the capture of these data. And definitely, so the rules, since they are not consuming this data, they will be suboptimal. And these rules will be only catching obvious fraud scenarios. So by which I mean, the person, or since these rules are created by humans, they have some preconceived notions on what fraud is. Okay, and they'll try to write rules to capture those kind of frauds, but that is not the case always, right? Sometimes frauds could be from a different angle which the person could have missed altogether. So when you're trying to craft rules, these will not be in a position to capture those frauds from a different perspective. So that is the need for artificial intelligence based fraud detection system. So if you see AI based fraud detection system, they are quite intelligent. First of all, they are in a position to consume the streaming data. You can build a model that consumes terabytes of data, and tries to understand the pattern from it. And uh, those systems are much more efficient than a simple rule that is built on some static data. And there are ways to automate rule generation automatically. So whenever a particular, so let's say that you have a rule refresh frequency of once in 3 months or so. So automatically you can kickstart a pipeline that will analyze the data and automatically updates the models, and then the rule is also getting updated. So again, and this is not a labor intensive process. It's just a one time effort that we need to put in to create this pipeline, and the pipeline can be run over and over again with the new data, and that will just refresh the system and make it more robust to new fraud attacks. So yeah, so that's about the introduction. We have come to the end of the introduction, and now let's get into the next section, which is seeing fraud detection from the lens of supervised learning.